Hi everybody. So my name is Adam Sperber of the Sperber Group. The purpose of this video is we really want to educate you on the process of buying a house from start to finish, from the day you meet me to the day you close. And here we have a panel of experts. We have Mike Potoczak from Embrace Home Loans, and then we have Nima Ameri of Ameri Law Firm. So we're all gonna step you through the process. We're gonna explain to you step by step exactly what you're gonna do, and let's get started. First of all, we're gonna talk about the mortgage process and getting pre-approved. So let's talk about what's required to do the mortgage, right? The mortgage pre-approval is very important because nobody is going to look at your offer unless you have a mortgage pre-approval showing that you're actually qualified to buy that house. Let's step through the process. So what's required of a buyer if they're looking to get their pre-approval and figure out how much they're qualified to spend?
First things first, I wanna have a quick little intro call and answer any questions that they might have up front, especially first-time buyers. They have no idea what they're doing.
Sure.
You and I, we do this a lot. We like to consider ourselves professionals. We want to give them the best advice possible, tell them there's really no bad questions. And from there, after a little 15-minute intro call, I like to get an application. That's really going to be the meat and potatoes of what I'm going to be able to pre-approve them off of. Get that application, a little bit of paperwork. W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements, copy of your driver's license. If you're self-employed, taxes. If you own a home already, copy your mortgage statement. That's really it. From there, what I like to do with all my clients is I go through the pre-approval and then I do a video call with them. I show them in real time. Hey, this is what a realistic monthly payment's going to look like for the house you want to buy. If it's $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and I'm going to show them what that monthly payment looks like and what realistic cash to close is going to look like. If you go to some of these online lenders, they may just tell you, hey, Joe, you're pre-approved for $600,000 with 10% down. Have fun.
So now we have the pre-approval,
Yep.
And you say, all right, you're qualified to spend $600,000, but just because you're qualified for $600,000 doesn't mean you have to spend $600,000. It's whatever you're comfortable with.
That's correct. So during my video call I'm going to tell them, what the book says they should probably be spending, how much I can get them approved to spend, and then realistically what they're actually comfortable spending. And those three numbers are usually not the same.
And then you pass along the pre-approval to me, and then comes the real fun.
Yeah, then I give you, a little background. We could have a three-way call with me, you, the buyers, say, Joe and Sally want to spend X amount of dollars on a home. They have this much to put down, and have at it.
So now that you found the house you love, you made an offer, you wrote up the contract, now we enter what's called attorney review. And to discuss that, we have Nima Ameri. What is attorney review? What does it do?
Sure. So why am I discussing attorney review? Because it's a legal doctrine, right? Because of the fast pace of real estate transactions and the desire to want things to move expeditiously when you want to buy a house, they didn't want there to be a process where before you could even put an offer, you have to go hire an attorney, then you would draft a contract, the contracts would be fundamentally different, the other side would have to review it. It doesn't make sense on a scalable basis. So effectively what happened is the courts came down and said, listen, we have a real estate commission, a real estate board, let's put together a form contract. It's going to be the same for absolutely everybody. This is going to be the contract that we're telling you on a state level that this is what works, and you guys use that. It also says, though, that because this is not being created by an attorney, right, and there's case law that created this, because an attorney isn't drafting this, right, it's not effective immediately. After that offer is accepted, right, the contract is the offer. A contract requires offer, acceptance, and meeting of the minds. It means there needs to be an offer. It means that offer needs to be accepted, and the two people need to believe that the offer is what it is, and the acceptance of that offer is what it is, right? The terms are what they are. Once that is done, you get 72 hours, and in that time, you go hire a lawyer. You have 3 days, effectively, to hire an attorney. What your attorney then does is during those 3 days, has to send a letter saying, hey, we're canceling the contract. That sounds, oh my God, canceling the contract. You have to do that because you have to say, all right, we're gonna stop this contract. However, and this is usually how the letters write, but we would re-enter into an agreement based on the following changes and or amendments to this contract. And most people at this point know the key stuff they want to change, and they have framework, right, for the changes they want to make, and then they customize this framework. This agreement, this amendment to the original form contract in New Jersey is called a rider, right? And each of these riders is very specific to your transaction. Are you a condo? Is there HOA fees? Do you have to review bylaws? Do you need additional searches like septic searches? Are there different things involved? Chimney, are you waiving things? Are you taking out inspections? Are you saying, I agree and I accept the property as it is, right? What representations and warranties are you removing or adding? Because you can't just use a generic contract. Every property is different, it's unique. So the rider effectively amends the original contract and it goes back and forth between the two lawyers, between the buyer's lawyer and the seller's lawyer. And those two people effectively negotiate the terms, and each person is trying to do what's best for their client, protect their client's best interest, while still maintaining a semblance of a fair transaction. And you negotiate that. When the riders are agreed to, you're now into contract and you fund the deposit. That's the consideration portion. So a contract is offer, acceptance requires meeting of the minds, you need consideration. So consideration effectively becomes your deposit or otherwise. Now, people in South Jersey do it differently. So Jersey is not the same all around. South Jersey sometimes don't use lawyers, the title company does it. That's stupid, you're stupid, don't do that. If you're from South Jersey, like don't be cheap. You're buying a very expensive piece of property, hire someone who went to law school and has a doctorate in law.
Do it the right way.
Who knows what they're doing, right? Like a title company's not there to negotiate a contract for you. That doesn't make sense. Just because people do things a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way you should do it or it's the right way to do it. And ChatGPT is not your lawyer either. You can't teach yourself 3 years of law school off of an open AI platform that may not even give you proper information because it's extracting data from sources that are wrong, right? That's why you need a lawyer, because if your lawyer screws up, you're going to sue your lawyer for malpractice. If ChatGPT screws up, not much you can do. If your title company screws up, well, they weren't your lawyer, so it wasn't their job to look out for your legal interests. So be smart, hire a lawyer so there's someone that you can hold accountable for representing your best interest in a contract.
So what's going to happen is the buyer's attorney and the seller's attorney, they're going to come together, they're going to figure out how to compromise with each other to make the contract work for both of their clients. Once everybody signs off on it, then we go under contract. So no money is due until you go under contract.
Correct. There's different theories on that, right? So sometimes when you are making an offer, you do what's called a good faith deposit,
Sure.
where you'll add a check of like $100 or $1,000. But I think that I've noticed that people began dropping off of that.
I don't really see that very much.
No, that was like an old school way of doing things to say, hey, look, we're giving you consideration, so this is a contract.
Sure.
But I think people have now been like, okay, the sheer fact that there's a value associated with this is considered consideration.
And just remember, you have 3 days to enter attorney review. Once you get into attorney review, it can last a day, a week, a month.
The 3-day attorney review period by law means you have 3 days to get a lawyer, and the lawyer can then decide what to do. If within 3 days you don't terminate the contract, you don't terminate, not just, hey, you can start negotiating in 3 days, but if you don't physically terminate that contract in 3 days, which is why the lawyers send a letter saying, hey, we terminate, but we'll go back in under these conditions, that contract is now fully enforceable. So you have to know what you're doing. If you wait 3 days, if you wait on day 3 to get a lawyer and he doesn't send out his termination letter with a rider until day 4, the other attorney's going to say, kick rocks, buddy. This is a valid contract. It's enforceable.
So now attorney review is over. We're in contract. What happens now?
Well, now the whole process begins. Now you have to meet the terms of those contracts, right? Which means you have to meet the deadlines, you have to do your inspections, you have to do whatever the contract and your rider that you prepared tells you to do.
Sure.
And usually that's with the assistance of the quarterback, which is your real estate agent, if you're a buyer. Because as a seller, there's not much for you to do other than sit back and maybe exchange some documents if you have it in your possession, like prior title, etc. But as a buyer, that's when your clock starts, right? Because, very importantly, just because you're in contract, you also may want to ultimately come out of contract and be able to get out of that agreement and get your deposit back. How do you do that? Well, there's 3 main typical ways of getting out of a contract. There's an inspection contingency, there is a mortgage contingency, and there is a title contingency. So your mortgage contingency basically says, hey, if I can't get a mortgage, if something comes up, I can't get this mortgage, I don't have to buy the house. That means if you lose your job, something occurs, and your mortgage company says, listen, I know I gave you a pre-approval, but we can't close you. You don't want to have to lose your deposit, right? You want to wait, fix what the issue is to go back and try again. Everyone, this is why you need a good lawyer, because sometimes in riders, they then change the mortgage contingency terms to almost make it like it's not a mortgage contingency. They lock you in. So even the terms of your mortgage contingency are things that are negotiated in these riders. So you have your mortgage contingency. In that falls appraisal. If the property doesn't appraise, you don't get your mortgage. People find the need to put in appraisal language, but realistically, it's within the mortgage contingency clause.
Okay.
Typically, what people put in appraisal is sellers will say, especially when the market's hot, hey, appraisal's not a reason. So if your mortgage comes back that you can get the number, but the property doesn't appraise, that's not my problem. You're forced to put down more money so you get whatever the mortgage company is willing to lend on it and you cover the difference, right?
Okay.
So that's where people begin to negotiate the appraisal. It's just a numbers game. The next is home inspection. You just did a walkthrough in the beginning with your real estate agent, your spouse, your wife, your husband, your partner, whatever, right? However you identify, your cat partner. But ultimately, once you've done that, you've just seen it aesthetically. You don't know what's really going on because you don't have x-ray vision, right? And a lot of people just show up with their dads who did a bunch of lumber work in their garage and think that he knows how to build a building. Don't be an asshole, people. Just don't. Get a home inspector.
Exactly.
There's people who are licensed, like your father-in-law who one time built a shed in 1970 when there were no zoning laws in that town isn't going to tell you whether it's a good house or not or has good bones. There are people who are licensed, who know what they're doing, they know what to look for.
It's some of the best money you will spend.
It is the best money. Almost as important as an attorney. Maybe even sometimes more important than an attorney, right? Because then you do your home inspection, you get a report back, and you're like, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't want this house, right? There's a dead hobo in the walls. I'm going to pass.
Nobody wants a dead hobo in the walls.
Zero people. I bought a house one time, somebody died in the basement because of a fire. It was a little.
They weren't still there when you bought the house.
No, bro, I didn't look it up. And then I was like, oh, shit. And then every time I was like, they only wholesale this. And everyone's like, even wholesale people were like, somebody died in the basement. I was like, he's not still dead there. They took his body out, bro, chill out. Sensitive. People are very sensitive. But I'm sure my home inspector would have told me there was a dead guy in the house. So home inspection, they're gonna go check it out. They're gonna tell you, is there a problem with chemicals in the basement, a leak that was there, or someone trying to hide a leak? One time I had a great home inspector be like, listen, it's really abnormal for a house this old to have a painted attic. Nobody paints their attic. You should look a little bit further because this paint was fresh, right? And
What are they trying to cover up?
correct. Now, that wasn't per se written out in his report that way, but he picked up the phone and he called the buyer and he called me. He said, and he called the agent. He said, guys, no, I've been doing this for 30 years. Every time I see a painted attic, it's a leaky roof. He told me, he goes, do you just go into your attic and decide, hey, I'm not going to paint my house, but I'm going to freshly paint my attic?
Yeah.
No.
Nobody's going to see that. Why would you?
Right? So ultimately, there's things that they will look for that you may not be aware of. And again, somebody else to hold responsible. We had a closing, the home inspector missed something, we sued him. The client was able to recoup the money because the home inspector missed it because he relied on a professional. And then lastly, you have your title contingency.
Sure.
Because if you don't have clean title, what are you buying? Imagine going to a car dealership, buying a car, but it's somebody else's car. You'll never get title to it.
What is clear title, though? Just explain.
Clear title means that based off of public record and available information, they don't insure things that they don't know. But based off of the available information that's been recorded throughout the history of that property, that they do not see an issue with the transfer of title from one person to another. That means every time the title lawfully transferred title in a recorded fashion, it was done properly, the documents are correct, and nobody can come back and say, hey, I still own this property because it wasn't transferred right, and therefore everyone after me doesn't own it. So it's an important insurance to have, and they'll defend any claims you have come to the property.
For as long as you own the property. But your lender is going to require title insurance anyway.
Because they don't want to give you money on a property you don't own. Again, it goes back to you buy a car that it's not from the seller. There's no title to it. So what do you do in that capacity? So and then you make sure there's clear title, and then you go to closing. Now, if you have no reason to terminate, you close. If you have a reason to terminate, you have at least 3 outs. There can be others because you can negotiate whatever you want. And you can either could be negotiated terms that if you don't close by a specific day, but those are your main 3 elements, and that's what you do once you finish your contract. There to closing.
So congratulations, your offer is accepted, and now you're under contract. Attorney review is over, and now we got to start the process. So once again, I have Mike here with me to discuss the process. So now you went under contract. What happens now?
What I'm going to do, when I pre-approved you, I already got your pay stubs, but sometimes it could take a little while. Maybe I have to get your pay stubs updated or get some up-to-date bank account statements. I got to get that signed copy of the contract. Then I am going to send you your mortgage disclosures. It's going to show you in 5 different ways how much your monthly payment is going to be. It's going to itemize it with your taxes, your insurance, and if you're paying mortgage insurance, or if there's going to be an HOA payment, we'll tell you what that's going to look like. And then we're going to itemize your estimated closing costs. Now, keep in mind, only like 2 of the items on the actual closing cost list come from me. Everything else is going to come from, for the most part, third parties like taxes and title insurance or attorney's fees, appraisal, recording fees, fun stuff like that. But it's my job to estimate those to a fairly high degree of accuracy. This way there's no major surprises on the day of closing. After I do that, you're going to sign your disclosures and we're going to work to get your loan approved.
So what's required to get the loan approved? What do they look for?
So it depends on your employment situation. If you're a W-2 employee, like I said, pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, it's really kind of simple.
How long do you recommend that somebody is employed? Let's say they're a W-2. How long should somebody be employed in order to, like, do they need 2 years of statements?
When someone's a W-2 employee, the book's going to tell you got to be employed for 2 years. But there's always exceptions to some of these rules. Let's say you just recently graduated college. A popular one is someone graduated college to be a nurse and now they're working as a nurse and they work for 6 months. We might be able to get you approved for that mortgage. That's why it's so important to come to me up front first before you go and fall in love with a house and then you can't buy it.
Everybody talks about appraisal, right? So when does that come into play, and how does that have what kind of bearing does that have on the purchase?
After we get your disclosure signed, one of the next things I'm going to do is I am going to order your appraisal. An independent third party appraiser.
Is it you that comes out?
No, it's not.
No, man. All right.
I actually, funny enough, I'm not even allowed to talk to the appraiser.
No funny business.
No, if I called the appraiser, I might go to jail or I would lose my license. An appraiser has to be an independent third party because we don't want to see any sort of funny business. You're 100% correct. We want to make sure that the house that you're buying is worth what you're paying for it. So someone's going to go out, they're going to appraise the house, and they're going to compare the home to other homes in the area that have sold in the last 6, sometimes 12 months. And they're going to compare it based on size, on quality of construction, on the size of the lot, garage, if it's got a pool. Pools really don't have that much value on appraisals, but they cost a ton to put in.
They do, yeah. You don't get that money back out.
No, you do not. But the appraiser's going to go out and then they're going to deliver a report. And if the appraisal comes in at value, we're all good. If the appraisal comes in low, which it does happen sometimes, you have a couple different options. You can dispute the appraisal. If we think that, I'll look the appraisal up for myself. And if we think that some other comparable sales should have been used, like me and you will talk, see if there's other comps that we might like better, we can dispute the appraisal.
Sure.
Or what we can do is we could bring Nima in, bring the attorneys in, and they could try and argue for you to buy the house at the contract or at the appraisal price.
Try to get them to reduce the purchase price.
Correct.
There's a little bit of negotiation here, right? So the seller can come down, let's say it's $50,000 below, the seller can come down $50,000, you as the buyer can come up $50,000, you can meet in the middle, but they have to come up with the extra cash.
That's right. So everything's a negotiation between buyer and seller. I mean, between the appraisal, the closing date, the purchase price of the property. So you can negotiate back and forth for the property comes in low. One of the more common things we see, if there's no specific appraisal language in the contract, is buyer and seller sometimes meet a little bit in the middle. You want to buy the house and they want to sell it.
What are the worst things that somebody can do once they go under contract that can really mess up their mortgage? Like, let's say I want to go buy a boat.
Please don't buy a boat unless I'm
going to give it to you or let you go on it.
No
Boats.
After.
Boats are bad.
Anyway, no boats. But we can do that after. After you close, go buy whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your prerogative. The worst things that you can do, you don't want to apply for any new credit. All right? No new credit cards. If you have a car lease that's coming due, let's say we timed this very poorly and you have to go get a new car and your lease is up 2 weeks before the closing, you got to let me know. If you give me enough heads up, I can figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
But we do not want to add any new debt. We want to make sure we pay all of our bills on time.
So your credit doesn't take a hit.
Someone once told me that they stopped paying their bills because their credit was frozen and they didn't think anything bad would happen because it was frozen. They just stopped paying. Like, oh, it's frozen. It won't go down, right?
It did go down, I'm assuming.
Was not good. It was really bad. Please do not quit your job. I have had people come to me and tell me, I'm going to quit my job actually they quit their job right when they went under contract. They thought that since I had sent them the pre-approval letter, that they were good. They didn't need to work anymore. They were set. They were, quote unquote, approved. You're not. you're pre-approved, and we still have to verify these things. So we're going to call, when we're doing a mortgage approval, we're going to call your current employer, we're going to call your past employers, and we're going to reach out. We're going to see how much money you made, how long you've worked there. We're going to make sure you actually work there, because mortgage fraud, it's a real thing. It's something that we have to worry about.
So let's just say I find $30,000 under my mattress. It just shows up and I want to deposit into the bank. What's that going to do? And what happens then? Don't do it.
Please don't do that.
Okay. Keep it under the mattress.
When people tell me that they have cash, I immediately blurt out, do not tell me where it is, because they love telling me, yeah, I have $50,000 in cash underneath the floorboards in my kid's closet. And I had to tell that person to move it, because I was the only other person who knew where it was, and if it disappears, it looks like I took it. Please, no large cash deposits. Everyone thinks that cash is king, but in a mortgage process, cash kind of looks more like fraud. We want to make sure that all of your funds for the transaction are coming from sourced and seasoned bank accounts. So we're going to ask you for 2 months of bank account statements. We don't want to see large cash deposits, anything larger than 50% of what your gross monthly income is. So if you make $120,000 a year, $10,000 a month, we don't want to see any cash deposits over $5,000. We see cash deposits are large, non-sourceable deposits that aren't your paycheck. We're going to ask you where that money came from, and you're going to have to give us an answer. It could result in a loan denial. It could result in us just, sometimes just backing those funds out, you're not being able to utilize them for closing.
So while Michael's working on your mortgage application, at the same time, one of the first things you're going to do once you go under contract as well is you're going to do your home inspection. You typically have around 10 or 14 days, whatever your contract gives you, to do this inspection. The home inspection is one of the most important things you can do on a house. If you come to me and you say, I want to waive my home inspection, I'm going to actively try to deter you from doing that. I think it's a very risky move. So the home inspection catches any defects in the house. Cosmetic issues do not count. It has to be a defect. A defect could be a malfunctioning air conditioning. It could be a leaky pipe. It could be mold. It could be radon. It could be a crack in the foundation. There's countless things that can fall under this category, but it has to be an actual defect. And just because we find something doesn't mean the seller is obligated to fix it. The seller really is not obligated to fix any of that stuff. New Jersey, as far as I understand, New Jersey is an as-is state. What that means is you're buying the house in pretty much as-is condition. If they want to, as part of the negotiation process, let's say we find a leaking pipe or electrical issues, we're gonna make our inspection request once we get the inspections back, and we're gonna request that they either repair it or give us a credit. That doesn't mean they have to do it, but as part of the inspections, the bare minimum of what I personally recommend is always structural and environmental. Structural is going to cover the foundation of the house, the structure, check for cracks in the foundation. Some of those could be really, really expensive to repair. So we want to make sure that there are no issues with the foundation. The environmental aspect is typically covering oil tanks, mold, and radon. A lot of homes that were built in the 40s, 50s, before natural gas was piped in, they had oil tanks on the property. Now, an oil tank itself is not a big deal. It's not that expensive to remove. The problem is if there's oil that leached into the soil, that's where the government gets involved, and that's where it gets very pricey because they have to haul the soil away. So that's why it's very important that you do an oil tank sweep. I don't care if the seller tells you and promises you that they did it themselves. I had a sale that I did about 5 years ago. The seller was an older woman. She had lived in this house for 30 years. She gave us the oil tank sweep certificate from when she did it 30 years ago. I told my clients, just do the sweep. It's $250, $300, just do it. Sure enough, there was another oil tank that she was not aware of. It happens, just do the sweep. Mold, what they do is they take an air sample from inside and outside, they compare it to see if the spore count is similar or elevated inside the house, and then we take those results and figure out what needs to be done. Radon is very easily fixable. It's a problem, but we can take care of it very easily with a radon mitigation system. A few $1,000s and the problem is gone. But it's very important that you test for it because otherwise you'll have no idea that it exists. So now we get our inspection results back, right? They're gonna trickle in because it's multiple inspections depending on the level that you do. Now it's time to figure out what's important to you. And we're gonna come up with a list. It could be a few things, it could be a lot of things, and do you want a credit or do you want the sellers to fix it? We're gonna take that, and the attorney, Nima, is gonna make an official request to the sellers. The sellers don't have to do anything, but typically we come to a happy medium where everybody's happy. Me personally, I like to work with the other realtor to try to figure out exactly what the seller is willing to do, what you're looking for, and how we can find some common ground where we can make this happen where everybody's happy. One thing that I really wanna highlight when it comes to inspections is old does not mean bad. What do I mean by that? A boiler. A boiler might last 20 to 30 years, let's say. It could be 1,000 years old. It could be 100 years old. If it works the way it's supposed to, it does not mean it's defective. So what that means is when you're looking at the house, read the seller's disclosure, take a look at the appliance, take a look at the water heater, the boiler, the furnace, the air conditioning, things like that. Find out the age of them, because you have a typical lifespan of a water heater. Let's say it's between 8 and 10 years. If the water heater is 25 years old, you know you're probably going to have to replace that pretty soon. So just remember, old does not mean bad. It has to be actually defective. All right, closing day, final walkthrough. Does that have anything to do with legal?
It does, because a lot of times, circling back to the contract, we write that the property has to be delivered in a broom clean condition. It's a contractual term. The buyers will go, they'll walk through the property. How do you know the seller didn't mess the property up on their way out? Smash a couch into it, scratch the floors, ruin something, take out a fridge, take out appliances they weren't supposed to take out. These are all things that before you close and that contract is closed out and you've paid, that need to be checked. If there's a problem, you call your lawyer, and now the lawyer says, hey, the contract calls for XYZ, you violated the contract, fix it. And that's why it does tie into law, and it's very, very important. People, don't be lazy, do your walkthrough, pay attention. Remember when you first check out the place, take pictures, and if you have a good real estate agent like Adam, he'll have remembered that property down to the T, and he'll help you on the walkthrough identify issues if any arose.
So you're done with the walkthrough, everything goes well, perfect. Now what happens?
You show up, you go to closing, we close out the contract, we sign all the legal documents, we take the transfer documents, it's given to title to record, we do all the paperwork to transfer title legal to the house to you.
And then it's yours.
It's yours, buddy. It's yours to
Congratulations,
enjoy.
homeowner.
That's it.
Join the rest of us.
Just don't get foreclosed on, because then you're gonna need a legal again.
Yeah, and you're gonna be calling him.
Probably not. I'm not gonna take your call.
So I know that was a lot of information. You don't have to remember it all. That's what we're here for. I'd like to thank the panel, Mike with Embrace Home Loans and Nima with Ameri Law Firm, for joining us and giving us some insight into the buying process from start to finish. So one of the big key takeaways from this is New Jersey does things very differently than a lot of other states, but as long as you have the right team in place, we'll take care of you and we'll step you through the process from start to finish.